Peace to everybody. This is about R. Kelly wants federal judge to reconsider denying him bond on child pornography obstruction charges. And of course, as you can see here yourself, is R. Kelly leaving the courtroom, shaking his head, thinking, "Oh, I can't believe this." Well, he shouldn't have done what he done in the first place years ago, allegedly. A day after he was moved to the general population at the federal lockup in downtown Chicago, R. Kelly is expected back in court on Wednesday to ask a judge to reconsider denying the embattled singer bail while he awaits trial on sexual misconduct and obstruction of justice charges. So R. Kelly was moved a day after he was moved to general population the day after at the federal lockup in downtown Chicago. R. Kelly is expected back in court on Wednesday, which today he went to court to ask the judge to reconsider denying the embattled singer's bail while he awaits trial on sexual misconduct and obstruction of charges. So he wants bail, but the judge will probably say no because, R. Kelly cannot really be trusted, allegedly. Kelly had been placed in the special housing unit at the Metropolitan Correctional Center after his arrest on federal charges in Chicago and New York on July 11th, but was moved to the general population on Tuesday. So R. Kelly was moved to the general population on Tuesday. Of course, he was arrested on federal charges in Chicago and New York on July 11th. Kelly had been placed in the special housing unit at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. Federal prosecutors have pushed back on Kelly's claims he was unfairly being held in solitary confinement, writing in court documents that the singer himself had refused a transfer to the general population and had a cellmate for weeks despite initially refusing one. So R. Kelly did have a cellmate, but he kept refusing one. Federal prosecutors had pushed back on Kelly's claims, saying that he was unfairly being held in solitary confinement. Well, how is he being unfairly being held in solitary confinement if the judge has ordered it, or whoever ordered it? Because, once you go to solitary confinement, that's it. While the issue of where Kelly will be housed at the federal jail might now be moot, Kelly's attorneys are still asking the judge to reconsider a ruling that he be held without bail. So, of course, Kelly was housed at the federal jail might now be moot. Kelly's attorneys are still asking the judge to reconsider rulings that he be held without bail. So I don't know if that'll go through or not. We're just hoping that we can wait and see. Calling the latest allegations against Kelly as stale as old gym socks, his defense team has argued he is not a flight risk and not a danger to the public and deserves to be granted bail. So R. Kelly's defense team has argued he is not a flight risk. Well, how can he if he turned over his passport to the judge? He had to surrender that passport. And not a danger to the public. I don't know about all that because, anything could happen, this and that. And of course, when R. Kelly sees all these young girls that are under the age of 18, yeah, I would not be around him at all. It is clear that Mr. Kelly is being punished because of the crime of which he is charged and because of his celebrity status, his attorneys wrote in their request for bail. So now his attorneys wrote in their request for bail, and of course, Mr. Kelly's being punished because of the crime in which he is charged because of his celebrity status. Well, when you're a celebrity, anything could happen. Of course, the music industry is demonic and evil, as it has been for years. And of course, R. Kelly is not exactly an angel himself, because we know he's demonic as well. The singer's attorneys have noted he did not miss a single court date in more than 3 years before he was acquitted of child pornography charges in Cook County in 2008, and argued that he could be placed on home monitoring to guarantee he doesn't miss a court date. So he has not missed a single court date in more than 3 years before he was acquitted of child pornography in Cook County in 2008. And of course, they argued that he could be placed on home monitoring to guarantee he doesn't miss a court date. So when you've got an ankle monitor around your ankle, you're only limited to where you are allowed to go. You are not allowed to go to places where you're not supposed to be, because if you do, that ankle monitor will send a signal to a probation officer or whoever. They also said any suggestion he has the means to obstruct any of the witnesses against him, frankly, preposterous. So they also said any suggestion that he has the means to obstruct any of the witnesses against him, frankly, preposterous. Mr. Kelly no longer has the money or the entourage he once did to help him in his endeavors. Home incarceration with close monitoring by pretrial services and limited access to the internet will make it virtually impossible to attempt to contact any witnesses without being caught, his attorneys wrote. So R. Kelly is not allowed to be on the internet whatsoever. He is broke, obviously, because he has no money whatsoever. Home incarceration with close monitoring by pretrial services and limited access to the internet. So in other words, he cannot contact the witnesses of what he can say to them or anything. However, prosecutors have argued that new federal charges in Chicago and New York on the heels of separate sexual assault charges in Cook County amps up the defendant's incentive to flee. So prosecutors have argued that the new federal charges in Chicago and New York are on the heels of separate sexual assault charges in Cook County. And of course, it amps up the defendant's incentive to flee. In the federal case in Chicago, Kelly faces charges accusing him of producing and receiving child pornography, obstruction of justice, and coercing minors to engage in sex. So there was charges he had in Chicago. Of course, he faces charges accusing him of producing and receiving child pornography, obstruction of justice, and coercing minors to engage in sex. Now, they already got the federal and the state, and the government, they already got his medical records that he allegedly had been spreading herpes to his partners, and he never disclosed any of them to his partners. The charges also include allegation he paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to recover tapes of him sexually abusing the girl at the center of his 2008 child pornography trial, encouraged the victim to lie about what happened. So the allegations, he paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to recover tapes of him sexually abusing the girl. And this happened in 2008. Child pornography trial encouraged the victim to lie about what happened. So the victim was not allowed to say anything because the victim was allegedly paid. In the New York case, Kelly is accused of racketeering and Mann Act violations, which involve transporting a person across state lines to engage in illegal sexual activity. The racketeering case also accuses him of kidnapping, sexual exploitation of a child, and forced labor. So he has been accused of racketeering and Mann Act violations. Now, the Mann Act violations is there for a reason, because once the Mann Act violations are there, that means you are not allowed to transport a child from state line to state line to state line to state line. So of course he has and of course it involves transporting a person across state lines to engage in illegal sexual activities. So this is what R. Kelly allegedly did. Of course, the racketeering case also accuses him of kidnapping, sexual exploitation of a child, and forced labor. So literally, when a child is still young or whatever, you cannot force labor on a child, because that is totally against the law right there. He is now, for the very first time, facing a mandatory maximum of 10 years imprisonment and up to a maximum of 195 years on the Illinois indictment alone. On top of that, New York has a possible sentence of up to 80 years, and that changes everything, prosecutors wrote. So now there's also the first time that facing a mandatory maximum of 10 years imprisonment and up to a maximum of 195 years. Now I would choose the 195 years so he can't go nowhere on the Illinois indictment alone. And of course, New York has a possible sentence of up to 80 years, and that changes everything prosecutors did right, allegedly. Federal prosecutors also have argued that home monitoring would not be sufficient to prevent Kelly from trying to influence witnesses against him. So federal prosecutors, they have argued that home monitoring would not be sufficient to prevent R. Kelly from trying to influence witnesses against him. And of course, you know that when you have home monitoring with the ankle bracelet around you, you're going to do everything you can to try to influence the witnesses. In other words, you're going to try to make them lie again. Defendant could easily obstruct justice from the comfort of his own home, even if he has an ankle bracelet, but not so from the MCC, where his communications will be monitored, they wrote. So the defendant could easily obstruct justice from the comfort of his own home, even if he has an ankle bracelet, but still it's wrong to influence a witness. And of course, but not so from the MCC, where his communications will be monitored. So he's going to be monitored if they decided to give him home monitoring, which I doubt very much they will. Even if the judge in the federal case in Chicago were to grant Kelly bail, the judge in the New York case also has denied the singer bond. So his attorneys would face another hurdle to get Kelly set free before his federal trials. So if R. Kelly was to be granted bail, Kelly would have to. The judge in New York case also has denied the singer bond, so his attorneys would face another hurdle. And of course, to get Kelly set free before his federal trials. So, it all depends on how this is going to play out. Federal prosecutors and Cook County prosecutors have yet to decide which case will go to trial first. Kelly also faces prostitution charges in Minnesota, so he's been getting around all over the place, infecting this woman and that woman allegedly with herpes. And of course, the medical records show that, because the government got a hold of his medical records to prove that he had it. And this is why he never disclosed anything to his partners whatsoever. So now there's also faces prostitution charges in Minnesota. So, and of course, if he has charges somewhere else, he'll be facing those too. Leave your comments below. I am out.